It is time for our 3 vocabulary words, and guess what? These are our last vocabulary words for this unit, and because, we've obviously got our tests and we've got spring break and we have reopening, we won't be having vocabulary again until April 26th. So we've got a nice long break from vocabulary coming up. So our last words today all deal with this concept of weather, and so our first word is weather. Now, I should also point out there is lots of ways to spell weather. So I always like to show this. I always put this up on the dot camera every year. So it says, whether it's raining or whether it's not, we will have weather, whether or not. So we are obviously talking about the W-E-A-T-H-E-R weather, not the W-H-E-T-H-E-R weather. There are 2 different words, sound the same, different spellings. So this weather is the condition of Earth's troposphere. So weather is the condition of Earth's troposphere at a given place and time. Weather is the condition, it's the condition of Earth's troposphere at a given place and time. So it's basically saying what's going on in the troposphere at a given place and time. So what this means is weather is something that is short term, right? Weather is something that is short term and it changes frequently. So weather is something that is short term and it changes frequently. And it can change every minute, right? 1 minute it could be sunny, the next minute it could be cloudy, the next minute it could be raining. So weather is the condition of Earth's troposphere at a given place and time. And again, weather is something that's short term and it changes frequently. So for my example, I'm going to draw a bunch of different images that we tend to think of when we think about the concept of weather. I'm going to take this and I'm going to kind of split it into kind of 4 boxes, just so I can have kind of some different areas. So when we think about weather, we might think about wind, right? What is the air doing? How is the wind moving in our troposphere? We're going to think about things like the temperature, and I'll draw kind of my sun here for that, right? Because we know when the sun is out, we're definitely going to have higher temperatures than when there's cloud cover. In fact, that's the thing I was going to draw next, right? Which is our cloud cover, right? How many clouds are there? Are the clouds really big? Are they really small? What type are they? And when we think about our weather, we also tend to think about precipitation. Is it raining? Is it snowing? Is it hailing? Or is it not doing any of those things? Is it just dry conditions? So these are all things we tend to think of when we think of weather. We think about the wind, we think of temperature, we think about cloud cover, we think about precipitation. So specifically, when we take a look at weather, right, and what's going to cause weather is this next word, which is called front. And this is another word that has multiple meanings. We're not talking about the front of the room or the front of your t-shirt. This is a weather front. And front is a boundary. It's a boundary created. It's a boundary created when 2 air masses. A front is a boundary created when 2 air masses meet. A boundary created when 2 air masses meet or collide. So a front is a boundary created when 2 air masses meet or collide. So When you have air masses and they're moving, that's going to create these things called fronts, and that is what is also causing weather changes. So we're going to write here for the details that this, and we're actually going to write two things here. We're going to write causes weather to change, right? Because moving air masses are definitely going to cause different conditions. And then this also creates low pressure. So fronts are something that causes weather to change, and it's going to create low pressure conditions. And so we're going to remind ourselves, low pressure means air is rising. If air is rising, that means that that air is going to be able to cool, condense, and make clouds. And so that's going to be a big role in creating storm systems. So for my picture, I'm going to draw what a front is, right? So you have, I'm going to represent them here as clouds, air mass number 1, and it's going to meet another air mass number 2. And the place that they meet, this line that I've drawn, is a front. So a front is a boundary that's created when two air masses meet or collide, right? So air mass number 1, air mass number 2, where they come together, that is going to cause the weather to change, and this is going to create a low pressure area. Our last word today is something that often can get confused with weather because it does have to do with weather, but sometimes students get them confused. And that last word is climate. We've already mentioned climate here and there when we've talked about climate zones, but we're going to be going a lot deeper after spring break. So climate is the average. Climate is the average long-term weather conditions. So it's the average long-term weather conditions of a location. Oh, it does have the word weather in the definition. So again, they're related, but they're not the same thing. And notice here, long-term. And if we look up here, weather was short-term. Oh, okay, so that's the difference. Weather is short-term, climate is long-term. And specifically, when we're looking at climate, what we're looking at is average yearly, right? We're looking over the course of a year, average yearly temperature, and precipitation. So when we look at climate, we're looking at over the course of a year, what are the average temperatures of a location? And over the course of a year, what's the average precipitation? How much water falls from the sky in that given location over the course of a year? And even though there's lots of different locations and places on Earth, we can kind of see that many of them are similar. And that's what creates what we call climate zones. We're going to write that there are 5 main climates, 5 main climate types. So there's 5 main climate types. And again, there's a lot more to these, but these are kind of the 5 main ones. We have things called tropical climates. We have continental climates, tropical climates, continental climates, polar climates. We have dry climates, and we have mild climates. And we're going to see that within these categories, there's a lot of different names, but our 5 main climate types that we have on Earth is we have places that are dry, places that are mild, tropical are climates that are very warm, Continental are climates that are kind of in the middle of continents, and then polar climates are closer to the poles. So again, this is our last part of our unit. We're going to be focusing on weather and fronts this week, and climate is something that we need to make sure we don't get confused with, and we're going to be going deeper into climate as we come back from spring break.